Welcome to everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. So this is a job seeker webinar for job seekers with disabilities, and my name is Gabby Nagel. I work here at Getting Hired, and my role is focused on job seeker resources and outreach. Today we will be talking about the key components to a successful job search, and we have one of our employer partners, KPMG, who will be leading the webinar. Before we begin, I'll just run through some logistics. So audio is available through the phone line. During the presentation, everyone is set to mute. Please use the chat box on the right of your screen if you have any questions during the presentation, and we will answer all questions at the end. If you're not able to access the chat box, you can also email me directly. My email is gnagel@gettinghired.com. That's GNAGLE@gettinghired.com. We also offer a live captioning service. You can find the link posted on the right of your screen in the chat box as well, so just click on that to access that. We'll be recording this webinar as well, and we'll be uploading it to the YouTube channel early next week. So if you have to drop off or miss the end or anything, don't worry, all registrants will receive a copy of the presentation and also a link to the recorded webinar as well. When you exit the webinar, you will also see some feedback questions come up. We'd really appreciate any feedback you can give us about the webinar. We're interested in, what worked well for you, what you learned, what you think we could improve on, and also any topics that you would really like to see a webinar on in the future that can also help you in your career development. So our presenters today, we have Annette Rosta and Erica Vellon from KPMG, and they both work in the experienced hire recruiting, diversity, and compliance. Annette has been with KPMG for over 17 years, during which she's supported the experienced hire recruiting team in various aspects. Annette's based in New Jersey, and initially as a recruiter, she executed full lifecycle recruiting across the practices. More recently, Annette leads both recruiting compliance and diversity recruiting programs, and as a former member of Direct Employers Association, Annette is on the board of directors. She's also a member of the National Labor Exchange Steering Operations Committee and Veterans Job Mission Advisory Board, as well as the USBLN Corporate Advisory Board. Annette has also been pretty ill recently, so we are extra grateful that she could join us today. And Erica has been with KPMG for 15 years. She initially started her career in insurance and then moved to the marketing team. As a human resources professional with over 7 years of experience in the HR industry, she's skilled in the development and implementation of diversity initiatives and programs, as well as diversity recruiting outreach. Erica's been successful in the execution of various diversity-specific firm events and special projects. Erica's also served as the National and Recruiting Liaison, as well as an advisory board member for numerous employee resource groups at KPMG. So thank you both. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Gabby. Thank you. This is Annette Rosta, and it's my pleasure to be on this call, and thank you all for having us join the Getting Hired webinar. Today, Erica and I want to provide you with insight to how to prepare for a successful job search. And, to put it into a little context, we have about 55 minutes, and of course we won't get into the details of all of the efforts that we could do to have a successful job search, but what we'd like to cover are at least the the main topics of it and try to provide you with some examples of what you can and should reflect upon doing. And to put into further background, we want to also share with you who KPMG is, and then go into our personal brand, talking about how do you build your personal brand, networking for those that you do know and those that you don't know, how critical networking is part of your job search. Of course, no job search would be complete without a resume, and we'll talk about the basics of building a resume that reflects you and your brand, and also about LinkedIn navigating, using social media, more specifically LinkedIn in this case, to further build your online network is certainly going to be a key factor in some of your outreach to let folks know that you're looking. And then effective interviewing, finishing off with having an effective interview with those companies that you identify opportunities with. I'm going to have Erica start off with giving more background about KPMG. So Erica, I'm going to share the presenter's privileges with you, and if you then want to tee us up and just give folks some context about KPMG and where we work.
Sure. Thank you, Annette. I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about KPMG and our history. KPMG is a global firm which provides audit, tax, advisory services and industry insight to help organizations negotiate risks and perform in today's dynamic and challenging environments. Our industry focus helps KPMG professionals develop a rich understanding of their clients' businesses and the insight, skills, and resources required to address industry-specific issues and opportunities. KPMG has been around for 3 centuries and has featured a number of significant mergers, with the most recent combination of Pete Morwick International and Kleinfeld Main Gordler and their individual member firms into KPMG in 1987. So around the world, KPMG has over 700 offices, which are located within 155 different countries worldwide, and we employ over 162,000 professionals. In 2015 alone, KPMG earned roughly $25 billion in revenue worldwide. Now, within the United States, we have 92 offices throughout the nation, and we employ about 27,000 professionals. And in 2015, our U.S. offices earned roughly $6.9 billion in revenue, which has been an uptick since to $9 billion. So let me give you a bit of an overview about KPMG's business. Our lines are our audit, tax, and advisory groups. And these are some of the industries that our professionals support. So within our tax practice, we have federal tax services, international corporate tax, mergers and acquisitions, state local services. Within advisory, we have management consulting, risk consulting, and deal advisory. And these are some of the industries that all of our practices support. So just to name a few: building, construction, real estate, energy, natural resources and chemicals, healthcare, life sciences, food, drink, and consumer goods, and retail. So this is just some of the stuff that KPMG and our employees work on. As far as supporting our functions, these are some of the areas our business process group team helps to support our audit, tax, and advisory practices. So we have over 5,000 employees to help run the firm's basically machine from behind the scenes. We have finance and accounting, IT, HR, marketing, legal compliance, recruiting, risk management, procurement. A lot of our people, our businesses help to keep the company going, which is great. Now to talk a little bit about our diversity and inclusion. This is KPMG's perspective on diverse talent. And we realize recognizing a diverse and inclusive workforce is critical to a successful firm. Annette, I'm going to pass the baton over to you so you could provide some helpful tips for folks that are looking to have a successful job search.
Okay, great. Thanks, Erica. I'm pass the baton. Okay, great. So how to have a successful job search. The first step in the successful job search is building your brand or knowing your brand so that you can tell your own story. In order to know what role you want to apply for, you need to know who you are, what you want, and what you could bring to your next employer. And that means understanding what your brand is. If you take a step back from your job search and you're wondering, well, what are your core values? What passion do you have about a specific industry or the type of work that you do? What's your experience, and what's your talent assessment? And what I mean by talent assessment is taking a look at what it is that you do, that you have strong talents in, and really knowing how they are marketed out in the workforce and what organizations need that type of talent. Everyone has talent, and we want to make sure that you are working on them to bring them to the surface and able to tell your story about those talents. So when you reflect on your core values, what passion you have, what gets you excited to do every day, what experience you have, and the talents that you bring, you're then able to identify your value proposition. And this branding paragraph, this value proposition, what we're talking about here is what is it that you're going to be able to share with people about who you are and what you're going to be able to do for the next employer. And that knowing your value proposition, having that brand, that you know what that brand is and that you can share about it is going to be very important to you networking with folks, for you to know what jobs to apply for and that you're going to be successful in. So I really encourage you to take that step back, reflect on what that branding paragraph is of yours. You can also get it down into, we're all familiar with the elevator pitch. That's like a verbal business card. In 30 seconds or less, are you able to articulate who you are and what you're able to bring to the next employer? And when you have that down, identify those careers, those topics of interest that you want to work in that environment on an ongoing basis, and then find out who those companies are that have a need for the value that you are able to provide, and they want to leverage that value that you have. So you want to make sure that you have that worked on. It's not a half hour of designating to reflect on this. This really takes a lot of work, and as I mentioned earlier, we don't have the time to get into that, but it's certainly something that you want to focus on, because as you build that brand and you're able to tell your story and show your voice and what you could bring to the next employer, that's when we're talking about marketing yourself and able to network with other people. So the art of marketing yourself is first knowing what your brand is, knowing who you are and what you could bring to that next employer. And then once you have that down pat, you can network with people in your, and I'm not talking about the social media, not yet, but network with people who you know, but also be able to network with people who you don't know. So first on the who you know, you might want to connect with former colleagues, maybe classmates, and let them know that you're available, and when you are available, this is what you can bring to the table for your next employer. Maybe it's an employer that they also work for, or maybe they have a great network that you can help that they can help you to tap into. Next, we have our we have our professional networks, right? I belong to, for example, Gabby was mentioning our direct employers, National Labor Exchange, USBLN, Veterans Job Mission. I belong to a number of different professional networks, and so my social network within there are those folks that I would want to reach out to and let them know if I was looking for a new role, what my value proposition is, what I can bring to that next employer, and you want to be able to tap into them. Locating the live networking events, this has to do with what professional organization, for example, you might belong to that is having a conference or having a meeting. I know from accounting type of backgrounds and IT type of backgrounds, there are a number of organizations on a national level as well as on a regional and more specifically a local level that have regular meetings, whether they're monthly meetings or they're quarterly meetings. Professional networks get together and you want to participate in those and build that network. And when you do, you want to be able to, again, to share with them your availability and what type of positions and value you could bring to their opening. You also want to be able to reach out to contacts that you've identified from those events and share with them, reach out to them and see if you can get on their calendar for 10, 15 minutes, no more than a half hour, because we want to be appreciative of their time but not take too much of it as well. And learn from them. Learn how did they get into their role. Learn what's going on with their industry. And when you ask them about what's going on with them specifically, they're able to open up more avenues for you. Of course, when you go into that meeting and you're going to connect with them, maybe just over a cup of coffee, you want to share with them what you're able to bring, but also listen to what they have to share about their network as well as the industry and opportunities that they may have for you. But don't just leave it at the end of that meeting. Follow up with them and let them know that it was great to have met with them. Maybe you have both shared a few to-dos afterwards, but also from your own perspective, take a step back and reflect, is this an area that you want to pursue? Did they talk to you about certain roles that you maybe hadn't thought of before? So reflect on that, take some notes. And these notes are just to yourself, but it helps you to grow and know how to do networking a little bit different. The more that you do network, you're going to see your skill of networking is going to evolve as well. And that's really very helpful. Of course, you want to make sure that you are qualified for those roles that you have interest in and you apply for them. But yes, there is still something to be said for who's in your network and who do you know, how do you find out about opportunities. And when you have your brand down pat and when you're able to network, you're going to see more doors open up because you're learning about the opportunities that are there. And when we're talking about how do you get that interview, of course it's going to be your resume, right? That's the proposition here that you're able to share with a potential employer. This is what you've done before, and you are able to highlight those skills and accomplishments that you hope will make an impact with them in the future. So let's talk about the resume for just a moment. Again, there's so much more to go into with building your resume, but there's just a few key things here that I do want to point out that I think would be helpful. Even if you have a great resume already, it's always worth taking another look and making sure that you're highlighting those things that can help you. So know the purpose of the resume. It is to get you into that interview. It's also going to reference what you have done, what your accomplishments have been, and what the next employer can see them leveraging to bring into their organization and building a stronger force behind them. You also want to assess and determine what your transferable skills are. And that could be, maybe you were in one industry doing a certain skill set, but because you've taken a step back and you want to reflect on what you're passionate about, what you want to do in your next role doesn't mean that you have to go into the same exact industry or role before. So when you are reflecting on that, know what skills you can transfer into your next position that you want to go for. So it could be your work experience or your work history that can transfer into a new avenue, or maybe it's your education or some additional training that you have taken. I did include here also, if you happen to be a veteran, take a look at the MOC, the MOS translator for veterans. A lot of employers have this on their website. We have it as well. But also through the National Labor Exchange, you can identify opportunities using your MOS, MOC code, and want to make sure that you were aware of that. But one thing that I also want to add on here that you can use to transfer is volunteer work. A lot of us volunteer in avenues not relative to the work that we do every day, but if you volunteer for a certain organization or something in your local community and you're passionate about it and you have developed skills from the work that you've done with that volunteerism, please be sure to add that on your resume. It shows the greater extension of who you are, of what you're able to accomplish, and you never know where the skills and talents that you've gained from volunteering will have an impact on your next employer. So keep those in mind. You also want to list your careers and topics of interest if it's, of course, listing your careers and reflect from your personal branding what are your topics of interest. So if there is a project that you have done, for example, maybe 4 or 5 years ago and you didn't enjoy it, you don't want to go back into doing that same project. Maybe it was a very successful project, but that's not what you want to bring forward, that specific type of work, then don't put so much emphasis onto that going forward, because you might find yourself being attracted, and employers might be attracted to you because of that skill set, but if you have no interest in pursuing that any further, then I wouldn't bring that much attention to it. Of course, if it was a 6-month project and that's all that you were doing, you need to talk about it and your accomplishments of it, but I wouldn't highlight that as my biggest and best if that's not the work that you want to pursue going forward. However, if there is something, a big project opposite, that you were very thrilled about and you want to do more with it, then shine on that and let that interest come across on your resume for the employer to consider you. And research the roles of interest. Become familiar with the terms and lingo. When someone is asking, I'm not sure what role to go for, I'm starting all over from scratch, maybe they've been 20 years with one company and they don't know what's out there for them. Don't start applying to everything just because you're interested. Learn about the new roles. Learn about the familiar terms and the lingo that's being used today, and be able to transfer that lingo and those terms to your resume and be able to speak the language for that industry, for that type of an event, for that type of role, so that, again, people can see that you're updated with your lingo, with your terms, and you would be easily transferable into the position that they have available. Also determine, of course, you can't have a resume without incorporating keywords, buzzwords, but that comes from you doing your homework in understanding those target companies that you want to work with, understanding the roles that they have available, what are the terms, what are the lingos, how are they describing what it is that they're looking for, and that might mean you taking a look at keywords and buzzwords. Of course, you don't just use them. There's got to be meat there, how it reflects to you. But I would even say look for positions to learn from, not just at your level, but your maybe the role before the level that you have interest in, even up to 2 levels ahead that you have interest in. That way you have a stronger understanding of the path of performing that role with that company from the beginning to end, so that when you're going in and you're able to when you're having your interview or conversation with someone from that company, you see the real girth of what they're talking about and the opportunities ahead of you. And then just a little bit on the formatting of the resume, just determine what your format's going to be. The easiest for the recruiter is to have things chronologically. Does that work in every scenario? It doesn't. But if you don't have it chronologically, it makes it more difficult for the recruiter to see your progression, and often the recruiter is thinking that you may have gaps, and that's perfectly fine to have a gap. But when you have to make the recruiter look for what was your past, you're now having them spend more time looking at the timing and not specifically the skills and your accomplishments. So just consider that as you're building your resume. You've built your brand, you've leveraged your network, and you've prepared your resume to get into the company. I did want to point out, just if we could touch on transferring your skills, a couple of examples. And I'm going to use someone who is a veteran here. If you have been in service, because not all recruiters are well versed with military terms and the depth of someone's skills and experience while they've been in service, keep in mind to transfer what you have done in service into civilian terms. So here's an example of what you may want to do, and then here's an example of what you don't want to do, is to talk specifically in military terms, because that's going to throw the regular recruiter who doesn't have that depth of military service experience, that's going to throw them off. And again, we want to make it all about you and about the skills and experience that you could bring to your next civilian employer today. So that's just something to also consider. Again, we have talked about what's your brand, who's within your immediate live network, and the value that you're going to be able to bring to the next employer, and how you've articulated that on your resume. Well, now you're ready to get more into the momentum of connecting with people and finding out about job opportunities. So we wanted to cover for you about your social media networking and how you could use social media to leverage for a successful career search. If I can just maybe take a poll and find out from you how many on today's webinar have already been using LinkedIn. Have you created a profile? Maybe, Gabby, we can find out how many people are using LinkedIn, and would consider yourself to be an all-star profile. So how would you know if you're all-star? Your LinkedIn profile will share with you if you reach a certain level of how much your profile has been filled. So let's wait here for a moment and see what answers we get.
Yep, so we've launched the poll, and we'll just wait a few seconds to give everyone a chance to give us their feedback. So as Annette said, do you have a LinkedIn profile, and would you consider it to be an all-star profile? So you can choose from, yes, I have a LinkedIn profile and I would consider it to be an all-star, or yes, I have a LinkedIn profile but it could use improvement, or no, I don't have a LinkedIn profile at all. So we'll just wait a couple of seconds more to see how where the knowledge lies when it comes to using LinkedIn. And okay, I'm just going to share the results. Okay, you should be seeing the poll results in just a second.
Now, just because I'm sharing this with you, I think everyone can always use to revisit their LinkedIn profile. I've recently had the great opportunity to learn from some incredibly talented LinkedIn users, and here's some great insight from them. So while I reach the all-star profile level, you know, I want to be transparent with you that I think that my profile could still use some additional work. And it's important to know that and to reflect on that your LinkedIn profile is a constant evolving reflection of who you are. So if you move into a new role or you have new skills and talents, it's always something that should be evolving. As you evolve, we'd want to update that.
Okay, so it looks like 42% have said yes, they have a LinkedIn profile, but it could use improvement.
Okay.
We have 19% that say they have a LinkedIn profile and they would consider it an all-star. And then we have just over 7% don't have a LinkedIn profile at all.
Okay. Well, I think that we're going to cover some things here for all of us to reflect on. So whether you don't have a profile yet or you're an all-star, you might still find a couple of key takeaways to reflect on afterwards and to update your profile. And again, learn to leverage your LinkedIn social network to find out about new opportunities. So let's go into that. First, when you're navigating LinkedIn, you know, establish your online professional identity. There are several ways that you can do that, and of course, this isn't meant to take the place of how do you build your LinkedIn profile. That's a separate session, I'm sure. But when you have your profile, get recommendations. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. So that's your first one, to have your profile and start to optimize it. And then the second level is to develop your professional network, to grow your network, share insights, join groups, and follow companies. And then the third level would be find out about the job opportunities. What companies have career pages with LinkedIn that you can start to follow those companies, learn about their career opportunities, and post through their job page. We'll have some best practices. So when you are connecting with individuals, so you have your profile, how do you build your network? Personalize invitations to people that you want to connect to. I know that LinkedIn makes it very easy to identify people within your network from other people that you may know, and it's so easy to just sit there and click, you know, connect, and that's when LinkedIn sends out automatic invitations. But take a step back and reflect on those people that you do have a relationship with. Maybe you've met someone recently and you want to reach out to them. Do send them a personal invitation. Maybe you haven't met someone or connected with them in over a year, but you worked on a project with them and you're letting them know that you are trying to develop your network further and would like to keep in touch, or maybe open up that recommunicate with them, open up that path and reconnect with them, maybe find out about how they got to such a successful level in their current role with their employer. It's not, you'll find that the more that you ask people about how they got to where they are or what skills and experiences are necessary from their perspective to get to the next level, you're going to learn a lot from hearing from them than just you telling them what you could bring to the table and what you could do for that employer. So it's a two-way street there to also hear when you're connecting with them, and building that authentic relationship by a personal invitation can go pretty far. Participate in group discussions. I belong to a number of groups, and I might participate in some of the group discussions because I want to, one, maybe I have some perspective to bring to that topic, but also I want to keep engaged with those discussions. And I have learned so much in my industry and the work that I do from participating in those group discussions. So it's not just about what he said or she said, it's about learning from each other. It can be about something professional. It also could be about a certain interest or a passion that you have, and in developing your LinkedIn network from that way. posting once a month, posting once a quarter, posting once a year, posting once a week, whatever you think is realistic for you. Try to establish what goal is going to work for you, and while you post, more people are going to see you and be able to reflect on who you are and what you're able to bring to the table, and that will help you to develop your network. Also, read the other comments and connect with the other participants from those discussions and from that network. Again, all this goes back to the more exposure that you have with those folks you're connecting with, the greater network you're going to have and potential opportunities that you're being made aware of. The professional profile picture. I don't recommend that you have a picture of, while we all enjoy a day at the beach, it's just terrific and it's peaceful, but having a professional profile doesn't take much. You don't have to go to a store and spend a lot of money on it. You can ask a friend to use a good camera, take a picture, and go ahead and upload that. It really sets you apart from someone who's taking this serious to someone else who's maybe just having fun because it's a social media tool, and folks do see the difference in people when they're providing that photo. And it is nice to have the photo that way. I actually just on Friday, because someone had shared their photo with me over the years, I'd never met this individual before. We have been back and forth for about 5 years, and it was because of his photo. I saw him in New York City at the Veterans Day Parade, and I picked him out of the crowd, and he couldn't believe it. And the two of us have connected and have already shared even more with each other because I was able to pick him out. So I think that's, I didn't mean to share that example, but it really just happened on Friday, and has already been instrumental in in the two of us having this relationship, and it brought it to another level. So it really benefits you to share your photo. Be easily found. By being easily found, we're talking about having what name do you maybe go by. Myself as an example, I do my middle name in parentheses and my maiden name in parentheses along with my last name, because I do connect with people from who I had relationships with before I was married. That's a way to easily be found. The work that you do and the role that you place in the companies that you work for, make sure that those are clear so that you can easily be found if someone else is doing a search for anyone else who's worked for, Acme during this time frame. Maybe they want to reconnect with people. Make that company name available for others to find you so that you can be found. Anyone can see your activity. So if you choose to have people see your activity, maybe you've taken on a new role, maybe you've updated your profile with some new skills, or maybe you've recently had an anniversary. You'd want people to see your activity so that when you do have something new to share, people can see that you're progressing in your career. Sidebar from that, when you're using that setting and that really great tool from LinkedIn, when you're updating your profile, so if you have your LinkedIn profile and you think that it can be improved, I would recommend that until you get it to the point that you want people to start sharing it, go into your settings and identify to not share the recent activity so that people don't see you updating it every few days. Just when you do complete your update, you're now active, and now people can see who you are and what new roles you have taken with your current employer, or maybe with your volunteer work or some additional community work that you're involved in with your town. Grow your network outside of the people who are exactly like you. There's only so much to your own network of people who do what you do. I have a specific field, and I tend to see the same people at the same conferences. So I make sure that I reach out to people who are not just in my in my field, in my industry. I try to reach out to people who are outside of my typical network so that I can grow my knowledge base of what else is going on in other industries or in other functions. And I would encourage you to do the same, because that will help grow your network and give you more exposure to other opportunities. Let's talk about your profile and how it should look. For those of you who are all stars on the profile, you'll notice that this picture of how your LinkedIn profile looks is a little bit out of date. And that's something, too, that I wanted to mention, that LinkedIn is forever evolving, and they have new tools and new ways to connect with people. So be sure to stay on the pulse of LinkedIn and what's new. I started to update this every now and then, but then it was just for those of you who are using LinkedIn a lot, you know that LinkedIn changes often enough. So I not necessarily can you stay on top of all the changes and maybe update the picture here, but overall, make sure that you do have your customized URL. You can see right below Juliana's picture here is her URL, and I would encourage you, going back now to the resume, use your LinkedIn URL on your resume, because a lot of recruiters will take a look at your LinkedIn profile from your resume, because it shows a different breadth of who you are. Your resume is one representation of who you are, but then your LinkedIn profile might share more about, again, your passions and your interests. Certainly, as she has down here as an example, she's a volunteer at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in San Francisco. You might find out more about people's passions and other skills and experience that maybe they didn't transfer yet onto their resume. So keep that in mind to have that live LinkedIn URL on your resume. Show your short-term experience, your ongoing involvement, and highlight your job and career successes. We talk also about having your summary, and these are just a couple of examples, if you will, of how people have identified who they are. That might be the summary that you use for your job and your career. What have you, who are you, your depth of experience, what you've been able to accomplish, and what you're able to bring to that next employer or into that next role. Maybe it's with your current employer, but maybe you want to be able to share your story to move on to another role within your organization. It's a little bit about who you are and your personal notes. I think that LinkedIn brings more the person to the profile than a resume is going to cover more of your experience and your skills. So that's just a little bit of the difference there. But I wanted you to see how other people have articulated very well their little story and how they have highlighted on their LinkedIn profile. We talked too just before in that step one, get recommendations. It's really important for you to have recommendations so that folks know that not just the immediate people that you work with, but other people that you've worked with in your past or through other organizations, that they all see the depth of your greatness, of what you can bring and what you've been successful with. Here again is just one example that people have, that someone has put together as a recommendation. It's important to have the recommendations. More so, you might see endorsements, but recruiters don't put that much emphasis into endorsements because everyone can just start clicking things, and you can have a number of endorsements. But what would someone really say about you that they would publicize it? And that's why recommendations have such a stronger weight with them than the endorsements. So think of when you're asking for recommendations, request the recommendations from a soft approach. What do I mean by that? Ask them, put it into context for them. Remember, Annabelle, we've gone over, we worked on this project before. Could you possibly write me a recommendation on working with me, or maybe it's on my leadership skills or how I was able to execute these certain aspects of the project. Also remind them of what that past project was and those accomplishments. So not just do you remember when, but tell them what were those accomplishments that you met. And then ask from a variety of different positions of individuals that you've connected with. So don't ask folks just at the same level and the people that you've been working with for the past several years or have been working with for the past several years. Ask from people who are above you. Ask from people who are in hierarchical below you. That way folks can see the full breadth of the impact that you make on people all around you. We talked before a little bit, we highlighted about following companies. Do follow the companies and also follow the groups. It's very important, as I was mentioning before, to be involved with those groups. And when you follow the groups and follow the companies, you start to learn about potentially new opportunities. So these are just a couple of examples of companies that you may want to follow. Of course, all of you now are going to want to follow KPMG. We'd love to see that occur. But think about who you are, what you have to offer, what makes you tick, what makes you getting excited for the position that you have, what's your passion, what's your interest, who is that employer that has that job for you, and follow them so that you can learn from them. You know what's going on with their organization, you know what's going on with their industry, and they're going to post about that for sure. And the more that you can learn about them, you follow the types of opportunities that they have available, you are teeing yourself up to be a very successful applicant when you come in for the job interview. These are some ways, again, these are just some additional companies or groups that you can follow, just they were examples. But the point is this, you want to find jobs by keywords, by companies. Maybe it's the postal code, your zip code that you have. Use LinkedIn to help you with your career, with your job search. So finding the right job is going to help you to identify what you want to apply for, what you don't want to apply for. And LinkedIn has a number, my goodness, probably the majority of any large company, I'm sure, is on LinkedIn. So use LinkedIn as that tool to help you to find your job. And take advantage of a company's career page. If you follow the company and you are receiving updates from them, take it a step further and find out about their employment processes, about what events they're going to. I know that we post what events we're going to, where you can meet some of our recruiters personally. We're not the only employer that does that. Other employers will share, we're going to this event, would love to meet you there, hope to see you there. Does it cover every single location that we are in? It doesn't, but certainly from a regional perspective, we're probably in some venue throughout the year in all the regions. And then when you get to your company, to that company career page, I wanted to just share with you a couple of things to keep in mind. Don't apply for jobs that you're not qualified for. So, the employers need to identify what the basic qualifications are, certainly if they're a federal contractor, but all employers want to share with you what the expectations and what the experience and skill expectations are of someone coming in and applying for that job. If you don't meet those basic qualifications, don't be surprised if you're not called for an interview or if they don't reach out saying that they have interest. And it's important to apply for jobs that you are qualified for because that shows that you know the value that you have coming in. Don't be a serial applier. That's someone who keeps just applying for a job hoping that something's going to stick one day. That's going to lower your credibility of you knowing your value proposition. This goes back to understanding who you are and what you need, what you want to bring to the table, what you can bring to the table. So knowing your brand and knowing what you have to offer, you should be able to apply for those jobs that you're qualified for and that you have a strong interest in. If you apply for positions from, and I've seen it from associate level to management to a managing director, that tells me that that individual doesn't know what value they can bring to the table or where realistically their skill level is. And so I wouldn't want to, they need to identify what their value is before I can strongly consider them to be an applicant. So be careful with applying for any and all jobs and seeing what sticks. Be strategic about what you apply for. Again, I've shared with you before, it's important to know what the levels are above the role that you're looking for, and that comes from doing the research with the company and the position beforehand. So are you always going to have that available to you? You won't, but when you follow the companies and you start to see the types of roles that they have available, this allows you to be strategic in what types of positions you want to apply for at those companies. And then, of course, be realistic. And this goes back to, being strategic and applying for the job that you're qualified for. Choosing to self-identify, I certainly wanted to talk about that because I know from getting hired that a lot of you have a disability, and every candidate that comes to a federal contractor and applies for a job is going to be asked to self-identify. And I do want to connect about that. So choosing to self-identify, some of you may know about the 503 regulation that was effective as of March of 2014, and this regulation was implemented to help individuals with a disability with job opportunities and keep employers accountable in their efforts to hire and retain more individuals with a disability. So the form is really a vehicle to track the number of candidates, applicants, hires, and employees, number of individuals with a disability through that form. And the recruiters and the hiring managers do not see that information. If the employer is a federal contractor, the recruiter and the hiring manager will not see that. Very similar here to KPMG. Our recruiters, our employees do not see that information. And it's, as I said, it's really just to track for the employer perspective so that they can share back with the government number of people with a disability that they've been able to employ. And that's important because of the 503 regulations that have been set out. So, if I can just share a little bit of, pros with self-identifying, that helps you in the future if you're employed with the company, because when they know they have more individuals with a disability, they can demonstrate a more inclusive culture, and that in turn brings more positive results to the company. And they'll know if they don't have the numbers, then they need to do more to attract and to develop that culture, that environment, to have a more disability-friendly culture. So the cons of self-identifying, I don't really see any cons of self-identifying, maybe because of my role, but I wanted to share with you some of the pros. Again, it wouldn't be a con of other people finding out because it is 100% confidential. The recruiter wouldn't see that information. The hiring manager wouldn't see that information either. And I know that there's a difference between the self-identify and the self-disclosure, but we'll get into that in just a moment. I wanted to show you the form in case you haven't seen the form yet, and please excuse that it's been shrunk here to get onto the slide. But this is what the form will look like, and each employer is required to have the form look like this. Of course, I broke it into two boxes, but every federal contractor has to use the same exact form that the OFCCP has laid out in their requirements of the 503. So this is just a sample of the form. We're going to get into what are the 5 needs to know of interviewing, have an effective interviewing, and I do realize that we're coming up to the 5 minutes to the top of the hour here, but I'll incorporate self-disclosing here in just a moment. You've done your branding, you've done your networking, you've reached out through people. You had that great resume that got you the interview, and you've connected with people in your network, maybe also to give you insight about the company that you're going to interview with, and now you're getting ready to have that effective interview. It's really the 5 no's. If you know about the employer, which you've already done your homework because you've been connecting with them through LinkedIn and through other people that work there, you can also learn who is your interviewer. Don't be shy to use LinkedIn. I know some folks might be hesitant to look up the person who's going to interview them on LinkedIn, but I have asked countless people as a hiring manager and a recruiter, and also as a recruiter myself, if you were to, if an applicant wants to connect with you on LinkedIn and they review your profile to learn more, what are your thoughts about that? And every single time that person is very positive that the individual has taken time to learn more about them and to prepare for the interview. So I do encourage you to know who your interviewer is, even connect with them on LinkedIn, and or if you don't want to connect with them on LinkedIn, you certainly can view their background and get more of an idea of their industry knowledge. Know yourself. You've done some homework in knowing yourself in creating your brand. Reflect back on that and know the skills and experience and the certain accomplishments that you've had for the skills that you're going to be assessed on during the interview. And then what does the interviewer, what does the employer know about you? Keep in mind that employers will have your LinkedIn profile, possibly, if that's how you found out about the role. Maybe there's a connection there. But also remember that in social media, you want to portray the professional that you are, and be careful about what you might post on various social media sites. If the employer is going to know more about you, they might see that, what you were doing last Friday night, and just be aware that the employer wants to know about you. So what is out there about you to know? Just reflect on that. And how do you prepare for that interview? Anyone who has done a number of interviews and is successful in their career, I have spoken to a lot of people who are very successful, and before they go into a meeting, they prepare for that meeting. It's the same thing for an interview. Before you go into that interview, prepare. So at all levels of the game, people are taking the step back to prepare for their interview. Do some mock interviews if you haven't conducted an interview anytime recently, whether it's in front of the mirror, audio tape yourself, listen to how you answer questions, or maybe videotape yourself if you want to see what body language you're conveying, and practice the interview questions. You can Google top interview questions, and we're all going to find the same thing. Find out how you would respond to some of those questions, and prepare yourself. If there's a certain question that you keep tripping over, take the time to practice that, practice. And, of course, your elevator pitch you've had earlier down pat, but be sure to have that elevator pitch ready for when you go into that interview, because you might meet additional people along the way, and in 10 seconds, 30 seconds or less, you want to be able to convey to those additional folks who you are and what you're able to bring to the table. And then, of course, when you present yourself for success, folks are going to see you as a successful individual. That comes from grooming and attire. Also, accessories, you want to try to limit the accessories and have the focus on you and not what accessories you have coming with you. And then, of course, with your cell phone, either turn it off completely. Don't just put it on vibrate. Turn it off 100% completely. Don't ever take your cell phone out during an interview. If it's because you're waiting for the call that someone's having a baby and it's an immediate family member, or you're expecting a call because someone is sick, then maybe you shouldn't have that interview that day if there's something else that's going to distract you. But there's no way that you would want to have your cell phone on for any reason whatsoever during the interview that you want to focus on and be there 100%. Again, if you need to cancel the interview because of something that is going on, it's best to cancel and bring your whole self to the interview instead of wondering who's going to call and what calls you do and don't want to take. And then the types of interview. Be prepared for the various types of interview. There could be technical about your skills and experience, behavioral type of questions and competencies that they want to ask. So those are probably during more the in-person interviews. But don't forget about the phone interview. When you have a phone interview with a recruiter or with a hiring manager, make sure you don't have any distractions. Get yourself into a room, close the door. If you're at home with that, let people know that you're not going to be available for anything for the next 20, 30 minutes. Phone interviews are more the shorter, so you can expect about 20, 30 minutes for a phone interview. And don't have any of the distractions. Take out your resume. Take out that job description that you applied for. You should track those jobs that you do apply for, so when you get called for that specific position, you could pull it up and know what it is that they're looking for, what was this role, how was it described, and have that in front of you. And I like to think of it as a little bit of answers to the test. If you have that right in front of you, you also have your resume, you are still very well prepared to answer the types of questions that they might ask you during that phone interview.
Annette, if I can just, I'm sorry, I just wanted to let everyone know, because it's 1 o'clock, if you're not able to stay on, I know we're running over a little bit, don't worry, we're going to be emailing all of the registrants a copy of the presentation and a link to the recorded webinar. So if you can stay on a little longer and, you know, get a chance to ask some questions, that's great. If not, don't worry, you can catch the end of the webinar via the recording.
Great. Thanks for mentioning that, Gabby. And,
no worries.
And we really are at the very end here. Last slide before just saying thank you to everybody. During the interview, some interview etiquette, there's small talk, and you want to keep the small talk small, usually talking about the weather or the drive over. The recruiter is also looking to just have small talk. When you get into the interview, and now we're in a closed door, be sure to have clear communication. And so what's part of our clear communication? If the recruiter is asking you a question and you're not sure what it is that they're asking, ask for clarification. Listen to what the interviewer is asking you, and then, you know, articulate back what it is that you know, articulate back your answer with what you're able to bring to the table. If you do, and sorry, I've skipped over the ask for accommodation, just trying to rush through here. But if you do need to ask for an accommodation, ask for an accommodation. If you know, of course, if they don't know that you need an accommodation, they're not going to be able to identify that for you. So if you need an accommodation, ask. And the interviewers and the recruiters are certainly trained to meet any reasonable accommodation. Also, beware of nonverbal communication. So we talked about you being on the phone, but now when you're in person, you know, you can't hide that you're, you know, how you're sitting or how engaged you are, but be aware of your nonverbal communications and share with them through your nonverbal that you're interested and that you are listening. When you're talking to them about the work that you've done, your accomplishments, provide examples, specific examples. More and more, those who interview are being coached and trained on asking, you know, specific questions. Give them specific answers, and that way they're going to hear that you're able to articulate what you're able to bring to the table. And discussing your ability, I did want to talk about that, and that's where I come to the self-disclose. So self-identifying is you answering that 503 regulation form, but do you want to disclose? I've been asked this a number of times by folks, you know, do I disclose that I have a disability? You don't need to disclose that you have a disability. That's up to you. However, if the interviewer may ask, will share with you what the expectation of the role is, and ask if you can perform those duties and meet the expectations. And if you can without an accommodation, then you can. But if you can with an accommodation, then that's up to you. If you're comfortable to share that you can do that role with an accommodation, I'm not going to tell you what's the right way, what's the, what to do, what not to do, but that's for each one of us individually who wants to share if you're going to need an accommodation or not. So reflect on that and, be honest, be professional, and keep, if you're going to share about needing an accommodation, if you're going to reflect anything more about a disability, bring it back to how overcoming adversity or challenges has made you stronger and has sharpened your skills in your qualifications for this or for that. And I've heard a number of people who have a disability who might share with me, so I have this disability and I would need an accommodation for this. But with my disability, I want you to know this or that about me, and that is their own story. That is not what this segment is supposed to cover, but I do want you to know that if you want to disclose, that is solely up to you, and if you want to disclose, then you should have your story to share, and that's part of going back to who you are and what you're able to bring to the table. So that's more of a self-reflection. And then, of course, after your interview, you want to follow up and say thank you and hear what additional feedback someone may have. But, Gabby, just in the spirit of time, I do realize that we've gone over. If we want to open up and ask if someone has a question.
Sure. We've actually got a few come in. So again, if people can't stay on, we'll also include the questions and answers in the email as well. Okay. So our first question is, how common is it for recruiters, say at KPMG, for example, to use LinkedIn to source candidates?
It's very, very common. It's very common. That's one of the more successful avenues for our direct contact. So you'll certainly see KPMG recruiters on LinkedIn.
Great. We have a couple of questions from some current students. So we have one who is a senior at college and majoring in economics. He's interested in a role in tax. Specifically, particular role is economics and valuation services. And he's just wondering if you have any tips on how to go about getting a job in that area.
I think that, I'm sorry, Gabby, in valuation services?
Yeah, it says economics and valuation services.
I would read more about the background and what is it that that person is going to be doing and your skills and your experience. And when you are reflecting on that, make sure that your resume is reflecting what you're able to bring to the table. And we talked about the terms and understanding the terms and the lingos that is being used by that employer. Learn how to leverage that lingo and those terms into your own resume, and that's going to help you to be noticed in their candidate pool.
Okay, great. Another student, I'm in graduate school, and I have a lot of education experience, but I do not have the actual consulting experience. How can I market the educational knowledge on my resume?
Okay. If you have no consulting experience and that's what they're looking for, I will wonder what else you have been doing in your role that's somewhat consultative, and see if you can highlight how you've been able to be a business consultant to a client. And when I say client, it could be your internal client, or maybe you work with an outside organization that you're a business partner to them and providing advice or guidance to them, just to show your depth of that experience. From the education, highlighting your education on your resume is certainly important, but maybe it's some additional training that you've done that you can highlight that will supplement that.
Okay, thanks. Just one last question, and this is about KPMG specifically. Would you be able to explain give some information around KPMG's training program for new employees?
Oh, sure. Gosh, we have a lot of training programs for new employees. When someone new comes on board, and I'm not talking about from student perspective, but from experienced hire perspective, when someone new comes on board, they will have, of course, their orientation, but they will spend the first couple of weeks receiving training and going through some training that's necessary for the firm. But, where you are, what role you're going to be in, what service you're going to join, that will then take a different path of training. And with KPMG, over all my 19 years here with the firm, one thing I've always been so fortunate to receive is additional training, not just in my industry, so it's support for me to receive additional training outside of KPMG, but also the training that I receive as an individual, as a performance manager, as a manager of a team, and enhancing my skills so that I can make the best of who I am and the role that I'm in. There's a lot of training that you would receive at KPMG, and also, I want to share with you that we have in our AIM network, our Abilities in Motion network for employees and caretakers of individuals with disability. We have a leadership training that we do for specifically a group of what we call AIM 1I5, because 1 in every 5 individuals has a disability, and we recognize that. And if you are so fortunate to be selected to be part of that 1I5, then you will go through additional training on developing your leadership skills. The firm sees a lot in you. Others around you see a lot in you. Your PML sees a lot in you, and they might nominate you to be part of this. So that's just another reflection on the level of training that KPMG keeps providing its employees.
Wow, that sounds great. Very exciting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was hoping that was meeting what you were looking for.
Yeah, I think we get a lot of questions from job seekers around sort of opportunities for career growth, within the company. So that's really exciting to know that you've got an educational leadership program. Yeah. So just to wrap up very quickly, if anyone is interested in any employment opportunities within KPMG, you can email your resume to myself, which is gnagel@gettinghired.com. It's on the screen there, and it will also be included in the email going out to you. So, if you have any interest in finding out more about employment opportunities, KPMG has very kindly said that they're happy to receive resumes for consideration. If you are already a Getting Hired job seeker and you have a job seeker account, then we can actually just pull your information from there if we have your name and email address. So, but if you want to be extra sure or you don't think you have a Getting Hired account, you can just email your resume directly to me, and that's gnagel@gettinghired.com. And with that, apologies that we've run over about 15 minutes, but I hope it was useful for everyone. And thank you so much again to Annette and Erica for joining us. That was really useful.
Gabby. Sorry,
no problem.
Thank you, Gabby.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your weeks, and thank you for joining.
Thank you, everyone.